everyone, this is Chocowit here, and today I'm going to be presenting to you my review of the season 2 of Creepshow. So if I seem really excited, it's because I'm really jacked up on horror movie energy at the moment. I just watched Possum from 2018, directed by Matthew Holness, who we love and adore. We love him and adore him. And it was really, 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 really good. And I'm just like, that movie was so good. So I thought this would be a perfect, ideal time to talk about another horror movie show thing that I love, which is Creepshow, obviously. This is one of my favorite shows that is currently on television, along with Disenchantment and What We Do in the Shadows, because I like horror, comedy horror. It's the perfect little threesome. Trio, not threesome. God. So overall, I think that season 2 of Creepshow was really, really good. And I'm very sad that it was only 5 episodes, but they were 5 episodes that are very worth it. And like my review of the first season, I'm going to go episode by episode because there are 2 stories per episode except for the last one. So I'll basically just kind of give a quick synopsis and review of each story. And kind of go over which one was my favorite in each episode, obviously except for the last one again. So I'll try to keep the spoilers to a minimum so we can hopefully, because I want you to be able to experience this if you're intending to watch it, go through, because they are worth it to see at least once without knowing too much. So please enjoy. Episode 1 was Model Kid and Public Television of the Dead. So I think episode 1 was definitely one of the biggest highlights of the season and possibly the show. It was just such a strong opener. I was so excited for Creepshow season 2. I was so hyped, and this matched my energy so well. We have already watched episode 1 many, many times, with me and my family have, because it was just really great. So the first story, Model Kid, it played right into my heart. About this kid, he loves old monster movies, and also the second story, Public Television of the Dead, played into my heart because it's like a crossover between The Evil Dead and PBS, classic PBS stuff, and it's just that's my 2 favorite things, horror and wholesome. I'll just go a day, I'm going to watch Creature from the Black Lagoon, and then I'm going to watch Paddington 2, and I'm going to be very satisfied. This is dual sides of my personality. So, Model Kid was the more serious of the 2 stories. Our protagonist, Joey, sadly loses his mother to cancer and is forced to live with his very sweet but very meek aunt and her abusive husband. So, Joey turns to his monsters for solace, They even show him watching Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is a hilarious movie. It really is. It's great, and Bela Lugosi is fabulous. Unfortunately, Boris Karloff is not in that one. I can't remember the actor's name that played Frankenstein's monster in that one. But anyway, it's really great, and he uses his monsters as solace and eventually as revenge against his abusive uncle. And I really loved this story because I also am kind of this person who really turns to old monster movies, as comfort. And so it was so nice to kind of see me, pretty much, set in the 80s, but it was still oh yeah, I totally get you, Joey, even though I'm in a very loving family environment. And I just felt this story, it was so dedicated to the Creepshow aesthetic with all of the comic book stuff, and it was just I really responded to it. I think whenever Greg Nicotero directs an episode, it's Creepshow all the way. You will not get away from the Creepshow. And then Public Television of the Dead is definitely a new favorite for my family. My mom's favorite story at first was House of the Head from season 1. And I think she's actually decided that Public Television of the Dead is her new favorite. And she was passionate about loving House of the Head, so Ted Raimi himself is in it. I mean, come on. we love Ted Raimi so much. I mean, I met him at a horror con, so like, yeah, I grew up loving Joxer. So Ted Raimi brings the Necronomicon onto an antique appraisal show, and evil is summoned to the television station. Our three underdogs, Claudia, George, and Norm Roberts, who is a loving tribute to and parody of Bob Ross. They go up against the evil that has taken over Ted Raimi and Mrs. Bookberry, a parody of Lamb Chop. This episode is so strong. Its nods to the Evil Dead are so masterfully done. And it's just like, it comes from a place of such love, and you can feel the love when you're watching it. And like, I could not talk about this without heaping praise onto Mark Ashworth for his performance as Norm, because it's just, he is almost, it's like really close. He's almost as comforting as the real Bob Ross. It's like, it's right there. And that's not even a knock on Bob Ross. It's just a praise of Mark Ashworth, because he did such a wonderful job. And yeah, the whole vibe was just, it's such a weird combination of things, you know, wholesome public television with Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead, but they just right together, and it's seamless. It is so good. So I will tentatively say that Public Television of the Dead is my favorite of the two, but both of them are just two of my favorite stories of the season. Episode 2 was Dead and Breakfast and Pesticides, so regrettably, after the stellar first episode, I was very underwhelmed by both of these stories. It was just kind of like, yep, this is an episode of Creepshow. You know, they can't all be winners, and that's okay. Our first story, Dead and Breakfast, follows the spinster siblings named Pam and Sam, and they are running this failing horror-themed bed and breakfast at their grandmother's spinster's house, who was supposedly a big serial killer. And since they're failing, they realize how much publicity an influencer could bring them. So they bring a serial killer enthusiast named Morg to stay at the house for free to draw attention. So I thought that this segment, it was well done, you know, but I don't know if I felt like all the way the characters acted, I didn't feel like it was earned. And you know, I understand, you know, in a limited time, you can only do so much. You know, 20 minutes, you can only do so much to establish a character, establish their needs, their wants. But I don't know, it's just, everything felt so rushed in it. And usually Creepshow is good at not feeling rushed. You know, they give you the concept and you run with it and you have 20 minutes and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, thank you. But it felt weird. It really did. It felt, the vibe was off. And, you know, though I do think the actors did a great job with what they were given. C. Thomas Howell in particularly, he stuck out to me as Sam Spinster. But unfortunately this one did just fall a little flat. Pesticide was also underwhelming, but it was really, really odd. And when things are weird, I usually respond to them better, so it had that going for it. Now, I really, really, really do not like bug horror. If things are about bugs, I usually step away, you know. But they didn't go too far with it. Like, it wasn't the whole thing, you know, despite being about an exterminator. It wasn't that much. So our protagonist, Harlan, is a shady, he's a very largely unlikable exterminator, and he is given a contract by a rich man named Murdoch to exterminate the homeless people living close to his house. After much hemming and hawing, Harlan accepts the contract and is plunged into a never-ending nightmare of poison, bugs, and murder. And I think definitely the highlight of this episode is Keith David as Murdoch, because I adore Keith David so much, and he's an incredibly charismatic performer. He owns every role he's in. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say Princess and the Frog is my favorite Disney film, and Keith David as Dr. Facilier is just perfection. He's perfection. He really is. So I'm just always happy to see him. And it was really strange and trippy story, so I liked the weirdness. The humor made me laugh out loud. I liked the comeuppance that happened, but so that was enough to keep me engaged. But overall, episode 2, it's kind of the stinker of the season. I'm sorry. Episode 3 was the Right Snuff and sibling rivalry. So episode 3 roped me back onto the Creepshow hype train. You know, The Right Snuff was an incredibly chilling story about 2 astronauts, Alex and Ted, and they are called upon to make first contact with an alien species. Ted is very sweet, he's very caring, and he's dedicated to his mission completely, while Alex is struggling mentally. He's on the verge of a breakdown because he continuously hears his father's voice telling him that he is never going to measure up. That phrase is repeated quite a bit throughout the episode, that Alex is never going to measure up. He's never going to be the best. And I think that's the thing is, we understand these characters right off the bat. Ted and Alex, we understand them. And that, just feel like that was lost in Dead and Breakfast. Like, there was too much changing. All, just too much. But Alex and Ted, we understand them. We get it, you know? We have their personalities. We know what decisions they're gonna make. Excuse me, I just had dinner. So the sets threw me right back into the 70s. A lot of disaster genre references there, a lot of Kubrick. The acting was amazing, and Breckenmeyer was just he made me care about Ted so much in that limited time. I was just like, I would die for Ted. I love him so much. And these special effects were so trippy. It was just, visually, I think it may be one of the strongest, just because it was so dramatically different. We're in space, we're on a spaceship, there's aliens. It's really, really great. The story made me very, very sad. But it was just such a treat for the eyes that I'm happy to say that I very much loved it. And sibling rivalry was also very strong, and it was a genius move to pair these 2 stories together, because The Right Snuff can make you really, really sad, and then sibling rivalry, bam, with the comedy. So they kind of make you feel better right away. And it's just full of zest and humor. Our story surrounds a teenage girl named Lola, and she's attempting to explain to her school guidance counselor through a series of roundabout stories that her brother Andrew is trying to kill her. And I don't want to say too much regarding this story because there are a lot of twisty turns, and I will just say that it was an extraordinarily strong episode. I don't want to spoil it because the twisty turns are fun to experience by yourself. The comedy was wonderful, and I'll just say it was really, really great. Had some perhaps some Lost Boys, Fright Night kind of vibes. So that's all I'm gonna say. I think The Right Snuff was my favorite of the 2 just because of how visually different it was and because of how much it made me feel in 20 minutes, but the sibling rivalry was really, really funny. Episode 4 is Pipe Screams and Within the Walls of Madness. So I had been really, really looking forward to this episode because Barbara Crampton is in Pipe Screams, and I absolutely love her. You know, I love all of those Stuart Gordon movies that she's in, and I've definitely watched quite a few movies just to see her, because she's just awesome. And I'm just so grateful that she's still working, she's still being the queen of horror that she is, and just being her awesome self. And also, Pipe Screams was surprisingly a very socially relevant story. And it does feel as though it was written from a place of wholly justified anger. Barbara Crampton plays a landlord named Victoria, whom even the show calls her a Karen. Like, they use that term, the lingo of the internet. And she hires a plumber named Linus. Linus finds that there are lead pipes under the building, but Victoria simply doesn't care and wants him to fix the clogs anyway. Reluctantly, Linus agrees and finds the clog to be much more than he bargained for. I really liked Linus. I thought the idea of our protagonist being this social justice plumber was just so cute and great. I enjoyed the symbolism in this episode, and I actually appreciate that it wasn't subtle, because I think that there's this thing, there's a lot of praise given on subtlety that I think should also be given on things that are in your face. Like, I see a lot of people when they talk about the movie Candyman, they're like, oh, it's so nuanced when it's discussing racism. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not nuanced, and that's okay. It can be in your face sometimes. If it's too nuanced and subtle, people aren't gonna get it. And so I think that there should be a balance between things that are in your face and things that are subtle, and this was in your face, and I'm like, yeah, that's good sometimes. We need kind of a punch, you know? And so I really liked that one. It was disgusting, but it was really great. And the second story within the Walls of Madness was this cosmic horror tale, and it was a big mix of like John Carpenter and H.P. Lovecraft. A lawyer and author offers her services to a man named Zeller, kinda a la Truman Capote style, and he tells her about a frightening incident that he experienced while working at a research station in the tundra. The episode contains a lot of Lovecraft, including ancient relics and evil monsters from another dimension. And unfortunately, even though I do enjoy Lovecraft's work and even more what people do with his work, or what they do with the cosmic horror genre that he pretty much unfortunately pioneered, I just wasn't really invested in this story. I would rather watch The Thing, you know? It was really well done, and like there was a satisfying ending, I think. At least I was satisfied on Zeller's behalf, but I don't know. I think Pipe Screams was definitely my favorite of the two. Episode 5 was Night of the Living Late Show, and this was my second favorite episode of the season, and definitely one of my favorites of the series so far. The entire 40 minutes was dedicated to a lovely story written by one of my favorite comedians and a personal inspiration to me, Dana Gould. Gould was in the last episode of the first season, Skin Crawlers, and he was so fabulous, and I wanted him to come back so bad, and I am overjoyed that he came back to write an episode, and one of the most Dana Gould episodes in the entire universe. It is literally one of the most Dana Gould things to ever exist. I have watched a lot of his stand-up, so when I say that, I mean it 150 bazillion %. Like, if you watch Stand Against Evil, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. So, the episode is about a man named Simon who invents a virtual reality machine that allows him to enter his favorite movies. His movie he chooses is Horror Express, which is a real horror movie. Simon's relationship with his wife Renee deteriorates as he spends more and more time in the machine, basically making that movie his reality. I thought this episode was extremely strong. Both Justin Long and Darcy Carden gave excellent performances, and it was especially awesome to see Carden in something other than The Good Place, because she's fabulous as Janet, but Renee is such a different character, and it's like, yes, she has range. She's a professional actress. It's so great to see her in something that's scary. You know, the old comedy to horror pipeline, you know? It goes both ways. You kind of dabble in both. And every time Simon was in the film, like, this episode had stellar editing and special effects. Like, every time Simon was in the film, it genuinely looked like he was there, interacting with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. It was great. And if any story deserved to have a full episode, it was definitely this one. Simon and Renee were absolutely characters that were worthy of 40 minutes to explore their relationship and how it is affected by Simon's addiction to going into this film. And I really enjoyed the time put into the Creeps opening and closing bits for this episode. Having him play VR versions of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead was just such a good idea, and it was really funny and entertaining because, damn, the Creep can game. He's really good at that game, and the story itself had a lot of great Dana Gould humor, and I don't want to give away too much, but there's just such good, yeah, so I can't even speak anymore. It was a brilliant season finale, and definitely a very worthy episode of television. It even felt a little bit like Black Mirror in some ways, just with the technology and all of that, but it was still Creepshow. Creepshow owned this. This is Creepshow's story, man. So overall, I thought this season was pretty strong. There were a couple of duds, but I like to think that there was more consistency in this season than last season. I know some people will disagree with me on that, but that's just how I feel. I would highly recommend this show to horror fans and to Creepshow fans. And, you know, just to kind of comedy fans, because it really is funny. There's a lot of humor in Creepshow, and that even goes back to the films. There's a lot of funny in those films. It's a really good balance. And I can't promise, but I hope that it won't disappoint you. I hope you've enjoyed my video, and remember to like and subscribe. Bye!
Do you believe in kissing, honey? You bet I do. Well, I believe in kissing, honey, when the moon is new.
So as many of you know, I am a citizen of the USA, and currently our country is suffering from a crisis at the border. Immigrants seeking asylum in the US are being detained. Families are being separated and kept in detention centers in horrible conditions. All of it is scary and horrible, and a bit hard to come to terms with. So until things start getting better, I'm placing this message at the end of all of my videos to try to use what little influence I have to bring awareness and help. There are a number of things you can do to help. One of the simplest things is to donate to Immigrant Families Together, who are fundraising money to pay the bonds of detained immigrants and also provide necessities to families such as hygiene products, food, and shelter. This organization is also looking for volunteers. You can also take direct action by calling your state's government's officials and try to make your voice heard, and also refuse to let your taxes go to fund these facilities. There are many groups online that are looking for help to make sure these people are treated like human beings and receiving the help they desperately need. Let's prove that there is still hope for humanity and help solve this crisis in the most humane way possible. Remember, showing kindness isn't political. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you.